So welcome everyone to this particular webinar on how to conduct conjoint analysis in SurveyCTO. My name is Mofya Phiri. I'm a customer research advisor at Dobility, who are the makers of SurveyCTO, and I will be facilitating this particular session with you today. All right, so let's get into it. What we want to do today is basically start off by exploring the fundamentals of conjoint analysis, try to understand what is conjoint analysis, and then we will discuss field plugins, which is the feature SurveyCTO offers that makes what we have for conjoint analysis possible. And then we will have a quick demonstration of how you can do this practically. And then we will also discuss how you can take advantage of this field plugin, extend it, and grow it for your own purposes if that is needed. So what is conjoint analysis? I'm assuming a number of us are here because we already have an idea of this, but just to put us on the same page, there are a couple of things to emphasize about conjoint analysis. So conjoint analysis, in some circles, this will also be referred to as discrete choice modeling. It's a statistical technique that's primarily used in market research. This method helps us understand how decision makers value different attributes that make up a product or a service. So whether you're in marketing or economics or psychology, it is a powerful tool that will help you unpack the various preferences that are there in the choices that your clients or the people that you're engaging with actually make. The beauty of conjoint analysis lies in its ability to simulate real-world buying situations and be able to help us predict consumer behavior relating to the products that we have. It does this, by allowing us to methodically vary the features and be able to record the responses based on the features that are being selected. And in those combinations, we can figure out what people value the most, and so we can give them what their main preference is. All right. So let's look at an example of this. And in our example, we're going to use an example of political candidates. Okay. So in this example, we are investigating voter preferences for the political candidates, and that is based on various attributes of these candidates. It could be their political leanings, their age group, their education level, the health policies that they have, and economic policies. That's what we have in our example here. And with each attribute, it has distinct options. For example, liberal or conservative for the political leanings that a candidate might have. When it comes to healthcare, whether they're for universal healthcare, where they're for private healthcare. And basically, you have all of these different attributes, different levels for each particular attribute. Okay, so with conjoint analysis, we'll be able to understand. Okay, when we give or present a certain group of attributes, a certain group of attributes with particular values, what is the preference that is there? And at the end of the day, we are then able to say, in terms of political leanings, the main preference is this particular one. But also we're able to say the ideal candidate would be this particular combination of political leanings, age group, education level, healthcare policy, and so on, based on the particular target group that we are interacting with. So when you have sort of this setup, you want to be able to present this in a structured way. Okay, so this is an example of us presenting that data so that a user can make a choice. So we have picked up a particular value for we've created one candidate with particular value for their political leaning, their age group, their education level, private. And so you present these two to your client, to your user, to your respondent, and they'll be able to pick one of these two. Then you generate another random combination, present them, they'll be able to pick one, and so on and so forth. And because they're doing this, you can then come and look at the overall picture that you have and make a decision, or at least use the data to make informed decisions about what is it that the preferences of your users are. And doing this allows you to be able to do it quite accurately, but also it allows you to be able to take into consideration a really broad spectrum of possibilities. Now let's talk about field plugins, because field plugins are really what facilitate the method that we are using to do conjoint analysis in SurveyCTO. Okay, so field plugins, for those of you that have been using SurveyCTO for a while, you're probably familiar with this, but they are tools that you can use, okay? Add them to a field, and with those, you'll be able to change the appearance, the behavior, and the functionality of that field, okay? So this can be a partial change, or it can be a complete overhaul, okay? So in our example here, on the right-hand side, we've got this picture where we're presenting a table and we are presenting some buttons at the bottom there. Field plugins are what have been used to be able to structure our data in this way. And so that when we click on a button, we are able to record responses for a particular question. So in this case, if we clicked on candidate 2, we're basically recording the values around candidate 2 as the selection for this particular field. So with field plugins, you can do a wholesome change in terms of the field looks like. But you can also create field plugins with a level of flexibility, okay? So field plugins can take in parameters which you can use to further customize as you need, okay? So in our field plugin here, so we have, for example, a parameter called labels. Because this field plugin can be used for other scenarios apart from political leanings, we've got our labels here. If we were using this, for example, for a particular product, maybe a phone, we would want this to be labeled phone 1, phone 2, or item 1, item 2, and we want the buttons similarly to be item 1, item 2, so that they can click on them. And so using just very basic setup in the form, you'll be able to change what these values actually take in. They'll have what are called parameters. And so what we've done is we've designed a specific field plugin, and basically it facilitates conjoint analysis, okay? And it does this firstly by seamlessly managing the randomization of attributes, okay? That way you don't have to worry about figuring out how the randomization is happening or programming that randomization into your form. The field plugin does that all in the background and hides the complexities of randomization. It also offers a user-friendly interface. That way you can easily pick up which particular candidate you want to pick or which particular item you want to select. It also provides extensive customization and flexibility, okay, through parameters, as I have just alluded to. So this plugin, it allows us to take your mind off basically sort of how to configure your form, but you can really focus on the idea of the questions that you have and the answers that you want to actually collect, okay? So it hides the technical details, and you can focus on your analysis and insights that you want to get out of your questions. All right, so we know what conjoint analysis is, and we have a sense of what field plugins are, okay? So let's take our earlier example where we were talking about political candidates, and let's see how we can then actually do this on SurveyCTO in a practical way. So I'll switch over here to my server, okay? So once you get in your server, you are able to see the Discover tab. So again, there are two ways in which you can quickly test this. We do have a sample form for conjoint analysis, so you can download the sample form, you can download the field plugin, upload them to your server, and actually test out that workflow. But it's much easier to use the hub, because in this hub, we already have set up the conjoint analysis workflow so that you can quickly test it and use that as a starting point. After testing it, if you like what you see, you can start making changes and adjustments as needed. All right, so I will come in here. What I want to look for is conjoint. Okay, so I'll just search for conjoint here. Yes, so this is already set up in the hub. So I'll just come in here and then I'll click install so that I can install this workflow to my server and I can test it out. So I'll say, yes, install this. I'll choose where I want to install it. In this case, I'll use an existing group. And then I'll just click on install. And this will begin to set up, install the form, install the field plugin, set up everything in such a way that I can easily and quickly actually test it out. If you're not familiar with the hub, we do have a previous webinar that covered this. So if you go and look it up, you'll be able to appreciate a lot more of what's available in the hub. So our workflow is installed. So I'll click on OK here, and then I'll switch over to the design tab and go into the group where I installed my workflow. So I'll click there, and there is my workflow. Okay, so I'll just go right ahead and click on test so that we can already begin to test this workflow. Okay, so this is opening up our test view so that we can actually see what's in this form. So this is a sample form, so it does have some steps that sort of guide you through how to test it. So let's go on to our second page here. So here, what we're doing is, first of all, we're entering an ID. Okay, the ID is not mandatory, but it's useful in your analysis to be able to relate the different responses that you've gotten to a particular ID. So I'll just put in, for argument's sake now, an ID code 1. And then how many choices or contests do I want to show? Okay, how many different combinations do I want to show? Okay, so the first set of combinations, the person will pick 1. Another set of combinations, the person will pick 1. Another set of combinations, the person will pick 1. So how many of those do I want to show? Okay. So for argument's sake, let's say I want to show 3 combinations. Okay. And then we also can choose whether we want to record our data as strings or we want to record our data in numeric terms. And so here I will say I want to record it in strings because I want to be able to print out the string so that you can see it as we are working through the example. And then I'll go on and click on next. So I've clicked on next here. What the field plugin has done is it has given me 2 random profiles. Okay, one for candidate 1, another for candidate 2. And all I need to do is I'm going to select which candidate I want. I can say candidate 2 and go to next. This is just something, a note field that prints out the result that is being stored, so you can get a sense of what has been stored. But in your normal day-to-day collections, you probably won't be doing this. But you can see right at the end here, it tells us candidate 2 has been selected. And what it has here allows us to be able to figure out what the combinations were and what the different combinations that were presented were and which one was actually selected. Let's go on to next. So this is now presenting me a second one. And here again, randomly, those have been generated. So the randomization is happening in the background and I'm able to just go right and pick a candidate. So suppose I prefer candidate 1 here. I'll go on to next. So the same idea here tells us which one has been selected, and that allows us to be able to track what was presented. I'll go and click on next. For the third one, again here, let's say my preference is candidate 1 based on what I can see. And then I can go on, continue. That's what's been selected. That's what was presented. And then go on to next. Okay, so in this particular workflow, we also show you some of the possible parameters that are there. We've already touched on this idea, but you can also go to the documentation for the field plugin and read on the different kind of customizations that are possible out of the box. Okay, I'll click on continue, and that's pretty much it. Okay, I can go on and save this form and actually submit this to my server. Okay, so that's how you test it. Okay, to understand a little of what's happening in the background, I do have the sample form that is what we were testing here. This is in Excel, but you could actually work with this sample form in the online form designer if you prefer. And in this sample form, what we have done is we have declared our attributes. Okay, so this is the calculate field with a comma separated list of the different attributes that we have. And then for each attribute, we have a list of the levels for that attribute. So that's all you would need to define. Okay, and you would get these and then also define the labels here. This is where we are saying it should say candidate 1, candidate 2. And so if, for example, you wanted to do this for another product, maybe a form, a phone or something else, you could actually just come in here, list down the attributes that you need for that particular device, and then the different options that are there for each one of those attributes in there. And you'd pretty much quickly have a whole different workflow that you can actually test. So we have this part just defining different attributes and levels. And then we come in here, like I mentioned, we're just collecting the ID. Then we are collecting the number of choices. And then we are also asking about the data format. And then we have a repeat group that repeats over that list of data, the number that we have selected there. And so this line here, 35, is what is using the field plugin. And the field plugin is getting these values, the attributes, it's getting the levels, it's getting the data format, it's getting the labels, and then it's generating a nice presentation for them. So you can see here that we are not doing any level of randomization in the form. We're not doing any level of structuring, sort of how the field should look inside the form. But everything is being done in the background by the field plugin. Okay, so hopefully we get a sense of what's going on here. If you have questions, again, the Q&A is open there. Please put them in there. Again, if you have a question that you'd like for me to respond here, please don't use the chat, use the Q&A so that we're able to get to it. All right, so we've seen a bit of what is happening. It's also worth talking a little bit about how the data is structured, because you do need to do some analysis on this data to get the most out of it. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, you do have two ways in which you can store the data. You can store the data either as numeric, or you can store the data as strings. And for the most part, the motivation for this will be how you are analyzing the data. So if you plan on using something like Excel so that you're able to easily see the data that has been collected, or be able to read the labels that have been collected, you probably want to use string values. Okay. And if you're going to use something like Stata, which does have a preference in general for numeric values, then you can use your numeric values. Speaking of Stata, we actually have some guidelines and some examples of how you can actually get your data out of SurveyCTO, reshape it, and get it into Stata quite easily and quite quickly. So if you're interested in that and you use Stata, you'll be able to find a very quick guide in terms of how you can easily get your output from SurveyCTO and start analyzing it almost immediately. So that is how your data is going to be. It's going to be saved that way, and you'll be able to process it depending on your tool of analysis. But as with anything in SurveyCTO, there's more than one way to do something. Okay, so there are alternatives. I talked about this earlier. It's possible for you to do conjoint analysis without the field plugin. I'm not sure why you'd want to do it that way, but it is possible to do it without the field plugin. So you can do a form design. In your form design, you can manage your randomization there, and you can actually be able to design the form in such a way that it does conjoint analysis. So you have to do randomization within the form, and then you can use HTML to structure maybe a nice looking table, and then be able to present that. But that's definitely possible if for some reason you can't use field plugins. We just thought we need to mention that. But also, one of the beauties about field plugins is how they are extensible. Okay, you can get the field plugin if for some reason you find that there's something that it doesn't do, and if you have the requisite skills, you can actually extend this field plugin to be able to meet your need. Okay, we do have a good example here from a team at Boston University who have already picked this field plugin. Okay, and they use it for Bayesian adaptive choice experiments. Okay, so what they do is they help researchers design analysis such that each time a respondent answers a question, the next scenario that is presented to them will be calculated to be the most optimal one. Okay, so they have another way of doing this calculation so that they can manage what they are presenting to users based on some algorithms that they already have. So they have an algorithm on a server, once it presents certain options, the user picks an option. It's able to figure out what's the next best option to present to this particular user. And so what they have done is they've gotten the field plugin that we have created. It is the one that's doing the presentation and everything, but they've extended its randomization to use their particular algorithm. And that's the beauty about field plugins. So you can download it and you can actually change it to be able to meet the requirements that you have. That's quite a lot about conjoint analysis, but I would maybe at this point pause. I'd like to mention just a little bit about field plugins, but before I do that, I am curious to see from our poll where we are at. Okay, so in our poll, we were asking the question, what brought you here today to join the webinar? Okay, so I'll end the poll, but I also just share the results so that you can get a sense of who's here. And I can also get a sense of who I have spoken to about conjoint analysis. Okay, so at least 21% are planning to use conjoint analysis soon. So definitely relevant. Another 30% think they might use it at some point in the future. And so they want to be ready for that. So hopefully this has been helpful, and hopefully we'll be able to get any questions that you might be curious about going forward. All right. I said I do have another poll. I do want to also get a sense of where you are at based on what we've just discussed. Okay. So I will launch another poll. In this poll, based on sort of what you've understood about the field plugin, you can give us some feedback so that we can learn in terms of the relevance of the field plugin and a few more things. Okay, so be on the lookout. There's poll number 2. Please take some time to just make reference to that. All right, I do want to just mention a bit more about field plugins, because this is a really exciting feature that we have in SurveyCTO. And as a team, we have made quite a number of field plugins that you can use in your forms. Okay, so we have a field plugin catalog, and if you go there, you'll be able to see the full set of field plugins. But you too can also design your own field plugins without using any of what we already have. So this is really an exciting feature. Just to give you a sense of some of the possibilities. So here are 2 field plugins that actually integrate with applications that are outside SurveyCTO itself. So on the left-hand side, you're able to see the Send WhatsApp or the Launch WhatsApp field plugin. So it will come in here. When you click Launch WhatsApp, it will be able to launch WhatsApp to a particular number and actually send the message that is in here to that particular WhatsApp number. So you can see that, we've repurposed what the field looks like to be able to send a WhatsApp message. On the left, for those of you that do telephone interviews, you probably have interacted with this already. We have the phone call field plugin. Okay, that is able to control calls from within SurveyCTO Collect. So you're able to dial numbers and manage phone calls from within there. We also have a number of field plugins that help with sort of timed data collection. So 2 examples here. One is basically a very basic counter with a stopwatch. So there's a stopwatch here. Maybe you're trying to track how many things happen within a certain period of time. This is quite useful. You've got a timer counting down, and then you can be clicking there just to keep track of what is happening. And at the end of the day, you get a sense of, okay, in this amount of time, this is what happened. But we also have field plugins that help with fairly more complex workflows. For example, implicit association tests usually have to be timed. And there's a lot of logic that happens in the background. We do have a field plugin that can help you perform implicit association tests within SurveyCTO. All right. We also have field plugins that just simplify how you input data. Okay. So on the left-hand side here, I have one with clickable images. So you want to select something, it might be easier for users to be looking at an image and then select parts of that image. But yeah, so you're able to click, for example, here, a continent, and then that will be recorded as the value for the field. And then we also have our ranking field plugin. So if you've done ranking in SurveyCTO, you probably come across this. Simply by dragging and dropping, you'll be able to rank. Rank your items. All right, I have definitely shared quite quite a bit. Hopefully, it's been helpful. But yeah, if you're interested in trying out a number of these things, there are a couple of ways in which you can do so. If you've already been trying out field plugins and you may be interested in working with conjoint analysis, if you're on a paid server, if you have any question at any point, we have our support team available 24/7. We can guide you in terms of how you use the field plugin, make the most of it based on your workflow. So feel free to reach out through that. If you are on a community server, you can type those questions, post them in the community forum. Other users who are already using the field plugin can get back to you, but we also be able to interact with you through the community forum. And if you're completely new to SurveyCTO and you're not sure, or you're on a community plan and you're sort of not sure whether you should be, getting on a paid plan or not, please get in touch with Maria. She leads our sales team, and she'll be able to work with you to understand your needs and be able to figure out how best you can leverage SurveyCTO for all the work that you're doing. So please do feel free to engage with us in those areas. Okay, and if you find webinars like this helpful, join us on our social platforms so that you can keep track of when we have our next webinar, what we're discussing next. But also you can be on the lookout for the videos that relate to even the discussion that we are having right now. And obviously, we do value your feedback. Okay, we want to know whether we are being relevant in terms of our coverage of what it is that we've presented. And so before we get into the questions, there's a QR code on the screen. If you scan that, you'll be able to get to our feedback form. But I'll also put this feedback form in the chat. Okay, I'll put it in there so you can provide feedback to us about the webinar. And we'll really, really appreciate that, so that we can obviously be more and more relevant to you. All right. So I will close my poll just to get a sense of where we are at. So in this second one, we had two questions. The first one we were asking is comparing two conjoint analysis profiles or scenarios enough for you? And the other one, we were asking how often you would use a conjoint analysis tool that does not display images. Okay, let me just end that poll and then share the results so you can get a sense of people's thoughts. So about 53% mentioned that they usually need more than two profiles. So that's really good to know and good feedback for us. And then also relating to images, about 50% say sometimes they'll use images. About 9% say they always use images, and coincidentally, another 9% say they never use images. So that's really interesting to know, and it does help us think about potentially the future of the field plugin. All right, so let me now get to your questions. Okay, so I'm just going to try and work through the different questions that we have in our Q&A up here. Let's see what is there. Okay, so the first question is from Adele, and the question is, how are the random combinations generated? That's a great question. So in the background, we're using the Fisher-Yates randomization method. That's a well-documented method for randomization. So if you go online And if you're familiar with programming and sort of like the different randomization tools that are available when you write computer programs, you can look out for the Fisher-Yates method. That is what is used in the background. The source code for the field plugin again is open and available, so you can actually go in and inspect it and see whether that method works. And if that's not the method that you'd like to use, again, like the example that we saw, there's a team that was able to extend the field plugin, manage the randomization differently, and use the field plugin essentially to just display the values that they have. So you have those options available. Okay. So hopefully that helps Adele. Feel free to follow up with another question if if you have a problem or if that's not too clear. All right. Here's a question from Philip. What if the respondent does not prefer either one of those two candidates? How can they opt out? That's an excellent question. So one of the parameters that we have for this field plugin is called pass, okay, or we'll call it bypass. So with that particular parameter, you can give the option of a value to be stored if the user wants to opt out. So we'll give it to provide a button for them at the bottom where they'll be able to see candidate 1, candidate 2, and then opt out or bypass. You can actually configure what text should be on that particular button. So you can that's part of the customization that's available in the field plugin. Great question. All right, Raja. So me and my team had recently used conjoint analysis. My question is, can we make changes to the appearance of the table? For example, can we make the text and the table smaller for each to fit appropriately in different screen sizes? Yes. And so there are a couple of ways. Field plugins work with web technologies. And in general, we try to design these to the best practices when it comes to web technologies, so responsive design and the like. So ideally, it should be able to sort of like grow or reduce in size based on the screen. But if you find that it's not perfect for your liking, you can always get in there and change it as much as possible. But from our initial testing, we find that it's quite responsive. So on smaller screens, the text size does adjust ever so slightly to try to make sure that it fits into that particular screen. But obviously, there might be limitations depending on the screen that you're using. So you definitely can do that. I hope that helps. Helps Roger. And then Constance, you had a question. Is the software able to do fractional factorial design? And does it produce a measure of efficiency, specifically D efficiency scores? So the tool itself is really facilitating you being able to do your project. And so in terms of what it's able to do in the background, scoring, and so on and so forth, that is more about your design. I think so. The field plugin right now is designed, first of all, to take in sort of your input, to be able to facilitate the idea of randomization, to be able to facilitate the selection based on the randomization that has been presented. The level of processing that you need in terms of what you actually present and so on, that you have to design as part of your workflow, either entirely in SurveyCTO, or if you're doing it in another tool, you can actually link to another tool. Again, I think that's why the Boston University example is really useful because they had a different way in which they wanted to do their randomization and flow through it. And so they designed that part to be delivered a certain way, and they're able to send that to SurveyCTO, to the field plugin. It can get what they have sent to it, and it can present that to the user as choices in a table, and the user can pick from those. So I hope, Constance, that helps a bit. All right, Taurai, I cannot see the icon you used before. Design icon to get the sample form and then the design. I can share my screen with you to guide. Taurai, this is something that you can reach out to our support team and they'll be able to guide you with these kind of questions. We love receiving these questions. We love helping you get started. Just a quick reminder, briefly, what I did was you need to have the Discover tab. Okay, so if you can't see the Discover tab, this is something that you can work around with your server administrator to make sure your permissions allow you to see the Discover tab. In the Discover tab, you search for conjoint analysis. That's the conjoint analysis workflow. What I did for me was to filter it out, but you can also just go through the pages and then find conjoint analysis. And all I did was click on install. Once I click on install, it'll be able to install to my server. Once it's installed to my server, it's pretty much the way that I use any other form. So I clicked on test, but you could basically download this to your mobile application, and you can also test it from there. I hope that kind of gives a good overview of how this was done. But if not, reach out to our support team. We'll be able to guide you through how you can get started and test this quite quickly. Sharia, how does the randomization work? For example, is it equally likely to show each value attribute? Is it possible to stratify the randomization? So right now we're doing plain basic randomization. At each run, the randomization is 100%. So there's no stratifying that's happening in the field plugin. It is something that we could potentially come in future, or if somebody here has already worked on the field plugin, extended it and added that, we'd be happy to hear what they have done and see if we can incorporate it in our current field plugin. But yeah, for now, we are not doing any level of stratification. It's primarily 100% randomization for each attribute, for each level that is in there. That's what you'll find when you use the field plugin for now. Okay, Lloyd, can you program discrete choice sets in SurveyCTO with more than 2 alternative options per choice? So option 1, candidate 1, candidate 2. So for now, the field plugin works with 2 candidates. Again, you can quite easily extend it to actually be able to pull out more than 2 candidates. But in its current state, you're working with those two candidates. So, like we mentioned, there are also other alternatives. So you can design the full conjoint analysis in your form design and allow it to be able to have multiple options, or you can change the field plugin to support multiple options. And that's one of the reasons we were running that poll, to get a sense of what do our users use, how popular is something like that. So it potentially could be a feature that we add to it. Okay. Martin, does the field plugin work offline? Yes, it does. So with pretty much everything that we design, we want to be able to support offline functionality. So the field plugin works offline entirely. So it's just as usual with SurveyCTO, when downloading the form, you need internet. When submitting the form, you need internet, and that's it. So everything is built into the device. So the processing is happening on device. So you don't need internet connection for that. All right, Hassan, how do you interpret results from conjoint analysis? That's excellent. I wish I was in a stats class so that I could show you some charts and Excel sheets of how you'd go about doing this. But unfortunately, that's beyond the scope of our discussion for this afternoon. But there are a number of tools that are available and a number of resources that are available to help you be able to figure out how to actually interpret this data. As I mentioned, if you use Stata, we already have set up a workflow that really just guides you through once you collect the data, this is how you reshape the data. You get it into states data, and you'll be able to quickly begin to get insights from your data. But unfortunately, discussing how we do that analysis is beyond the scope of our presentation. But thanks for that question. Constance, if you're interested to buy the software, what's the cost for academic institutions? That's a great question. I think I shared Maria's email address, sales@surveycto.com. Just reach out to them, engage with Maria, talk to them about what it is that you want to do, and they'll work with you to get you exactly what you need. So don't hesitate, sales@surveycto.com, and they'll be able to help you get started. Susan, I want to download the app and be able to analyze the data using Stata, sometimes showing quantitative data in Excel. Again, this is something that's definitely doable. When you're exporting your data from SurveyCTO, you can export it in Excel or CSV. When you're analyzing it, you can create a .do file if you're a Stata user from there, and you'll be able to get your data in. And like I mentioned, with Stata, we have like step-by-step guide on how you'll be able to analyze your data. That shouldn't be a problem. We do have a number of resources. Maybe it's a good time for me to mention this. So we have a full support article on how to conduct conjoint analysis. So it talks a lot more about how to work through this. It explains the example. It's in fact the same example that we have used. Talks about how this looks like in the form. So if you want to understand a little better, you can make reference to this. Okay, and then it also links you to where you can find the field plugin information, and then also where you can find the Stata. So I'll just try and open those up quickly to show you. In our GitHub repo, you'll be able to find information relating to how you can work through the field plugin. So this gives you a lot more detail about how the field plugin works, how to understand what the data output is, the different parameters that are available. So you have quite a lot of information available, and even downloading the sample form. If you prefer to install the form and the field plugin, you can download them from here if you're not using the hub. So right here, you also be able to find information relating to if you are using a statistical package like Stata, sort of how to export the data, what format it should be exported in, including some sample data that you can play around with, and then some Stata code to actually show you how to install this. So we do have quite some extensive resources for this that you can actually work with. So hopefully you'll be able to benefit from that. Samiha, I was led. They're working to make bundles that have attributes that are conditional on another attributes levels. Do you have any option for getting this conditional combination? This is actually a very interesting question. The field plugin itself doesn't do this, but if you notice, the way we are using these is using calculate fields. So depending on what kind of combinations that you are doing, it might be possible to create some conditional arrays, and then the field plugin will pick up which one of those arrays to get based on those particular conditions. So I think it should be solvable programmatically. That's a good case for a support ticket. Tell us what you're trying to do. Tell us how you're doing this conditioning, and we'll be able to advise on how you can go about just using how you design the form. All right, then. Okay, so I think Philip was making a comment based on something earlier that we had. I can't remember whose question that was, but it was related to D efficiency and scoring and so on and so forth. And some good advice from Philip here that in Stata you can have all of those things sorted out. So please take advantage of that. Okay, so Taurai was okay. I think we. Good with that one. James, I think I've just shown a few places where you can find this information, how to conduct conjoint analysis article, which is a really good place to start. And then the GitHub, where this particular field plugin stays. Okay. Now, I hope the black screen and everything is not scary to anyone. It's really just basic documentation on how you can use the field plugin. So please feel free to get there and be able to explore it. We'll also send out these resources at the end of the webinar. Once the recording is ready, we'll send out the recording and we'll send out a link to some of these resources. Right. Next question. Is it possible to upload an XLS form on SurveyCTO? Yes, it is. I think I already showed this is an example of an XLS form. So you basically just upload that into SurveyCTO. If you're testing the Conjoint one, you would upload this, upload the field plugin, and you'll be able to do the test. So that's the hub is really just giving us a shortcut to be able to do this. PowerPoint presentation, yes, Faith, we will definitely be sharing these resources presentation. When the video is ready, we'll also share the video, and then we'll also share a link to the resources that we have around this particular topic. Okay. LancyNet, yes, I think we touched on this just a bit. You can upload an XLS form. Does the field plugin is available in community? Yes. The field plugin is available for any user on SurveyCTO. So if you're in community, the limits are around how many form submissions you can make, how much data you can have on your server in terms of the size of the data, and also in terms of the number of forms. But the field plugin will work on any server without any reservation. Marty, is it possible to share with us? Yes, we will definitely share the resources with you over email. Thanks for that question. What data quality checks are put in place for this? The data quality checks are totally up to you, Anthony. So think of this as a normal SurveyCTO field. So any of the SurveyCTO data quality measures are available for you, and you can take advantage of them. But also, you will have an understanding of your workflow a lot better. So you'll be able to figure out what's best for you. But all the high data quality features that we have in SurveyCTO are at your disposal. This field plugin is essentially just a normal SurveyCTO field. And so you'll be able to look at what kind of data does it collect, and then you can put in normal checks. So if you go, if I show the XLS form here, things like this field required and constraints, you'll be able to add all of those things as they make sense for the data that's being collected in this particular field. All right. I don't have the time to actually export the data, but the data will essentially be something like what we had on one of the earlier slides. That's what's going to be exported in Excel. Now, if you don't want your data exported that way, so what we have, for example, what we do in our sample form is we actually split up the data. So you see these calculate fields here. They are looking at the two things that were presented in terms of political leanings. That's political leanings 1. That's political leanings 2. Age group 1, age group 2. So they're able to pick out what it is that was presented, and then it's easier for us to split those into separate columns, and then that makes it a lot easier to process the data. So depending on how you want to analyze your data, you can actually design your form to sort of make sure your data is already structured in a particular way at the end of the day. So that's why starting with a sample form like this one is quite useful. But Lloyd, if you're super interested, again, this will take you like less than 1 minute. You can go to the hub, install the workflow, fill out a couple of forms, export the data, and you already begin to appreciate how that data is structured. You can make reference to our article. We talk about the data structure somewhere here, understanding the data in this section. You'll be able to see, we talk a little about what the data structure is, and also a little about if you're analyzing the data, sort of how you can go about it. Sorry, we can't show that just now, but hopefully that sort of gives you a good starting point. Yes, Judy is asking whether conjoint analysis is the same as the conjoint, the C joint command in Stata. I'm sure data experts will answer that a whole lot better than I can do, being a SurveyCTO expert. Definitely have a look at that, but I would assume it's the same if it does conjoint analysis. I haven't used the cjoint command in Stata myself, so I will not attempt to give a formal authoritative response. All right. RTA, all right, thanks. We appreciate your feedback. Real-time access of data via API. All right, Anthony, that's not necessarily what we're doing here, but yes, we do have a REST API that you can take advantage of. So feel free to reach out to our support team or go to our support center, just type in API there. We have a fully documented REST API that you can access. So yes, we do have an API that you can use for this. All right on time. Samiha, I'll take this as the last question. Is it possible to use images in conjoint analysis? Also, can the bundles be shown in such a way that it can only contain attributes that the respondent has marked as important features in some question showing conjoint bundles? Is it possible to use images in the field plugin? Right now, there's no image support. If you wanted to use images, you can use the traditional method that I referred to earlier. In terms of the second part of the question, bundles, yes. Okay, again, I will come back to my form here. So we are creating what is going to be displayed using those calculate fields. So you can basically use form logic to be able to say, in this particular calculate field, only show the items that were selected in this previous question. In this particular calculate field, only create a list of items that were selected in this other question, and so on and so forth. So using that particular sort of workflow, you'll be able to determine only certain bundles showing up. All right, I have had a great time with everybody here. So thank you so much for your time. We are right on the dot. If I've missed out any question from anybody, please feel free to reach out through those methods I mentioned, our support center, our sales team, or even through the community forum. Thank you so much, everybody. I wish you a great rest of the day or evening or morning, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you so much, everybody.